Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Titletown Power BI user group today. Definitely have an exciting meeting where Mike Carlo is going to be presenting. So hopefully some of you are probably new to our group through his channels, but we're really excited to have you here and welcome you to join our groups as well. Definitely have an exciting meeting where Mike Carlo is going to be presenting. So
looks like you got your audio on. I might want to mute your video there. Hello, everyone. How's it going?
We're really excited to have you here and welcome you to join.
Hey, how's it going? So we're going to jump in here. Someone needs to mute their audio there. Excellent. Thank you very much for the introduction. Dustin, do you have any other announcements that you want to go through before we get going into the event, or is it just kind of the opener slide?
Just kind of the opener here. You can
all right,
take it away and go ahead, Mike.
Sounds good. We're going to jump into a super kind of neat topic, kind of near and dear to my heart. Maybe I would say I'm a little bit passionate about this topic in general. We're going to talk about the world's fastest DAX. Now, this might have been a little bit of a bait and switch topic here for you guys, because everyone's thinking, oh, this could be, how do I learn how to make really fast DAX? Well, yes, it's going to be very fast DAX, but not in the way you think. It's a little bit of a twist here. So let's get in. We'll start on here with the presentation. And then what we'll do is I'll begin with a very brief slide deck here, and then we'll get going here. So let me get my presentation up and running here. One moment. I'll share my desktop. Oops, if I actually have my control key on. There we go. And we'll switch out desktops here. Hold on one second. All right, here we go. All right, rocking and rolling. So we're going to talk about DAX Templates. This is basically a program that is made by Dieter out of, I think it's France. And he has worked on this, think of like quick measures that you would see in desktop, right? There's you can go look for a formula. Once you find the formula, you can just quickly add it and put it directly inside your Power BI report, whatever that may be. So this is the tool we're going to talk through today. But before we do that, just a little introduction about myself. My name's Mike Carlo. I'm from Power BI Tips. I co-run the Power BI Tips with Seth Bauer, my counterpart in all the data that we do across the internets. We also have a podcast that we work on called the Explicit Measures Podcast. I mean, if you don't listen, I think Greg is a regular participant in the podcast. He jumps in every so often and says, "Hey, Mike, what's going on?" So appreciate the engagement from the podcast. It's literally a water cooler conversation. We just like hanging out. We talk about things that are challenging us, things we're learning, just topics around Power BI. And it's surprisingly, it's an explicit measures podcast. And for those of you who know Power BI, you know where explicit measures came from. It's part of the terminology when you build. If you know things about Power BI, you know why you want explicit measures. So we try to be a little bit edgy on the name there a bit. But anyways, it's super fun. And you'd be surprised how little we talk about Power BI. And it's a lot more around the people, the process, solving problems, right? There's a lot of other conversations that happen around just doing development through Power BI. So it's kind of a fun, I call it like, maybe 50% entertainment, 50% learning. What would you say, Greg? Was it about that breakdown, or
yeah.
It's higher?
Yeah, it's entertaining to say the least. It's it's yeah, and it's less technical. But it's good.
Totally less technical.
It's all about how you use it.
Yes, and it's all about having fun. We like laughing a lot, so we tease Tommy a lot. So, anyways, if you want to catch me on any of the social media platforms, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and also on YouTube as well. So we have a bunch of content coming out all the time. We'd love for you to jump in and join in the community with that. We also, I just want to throw this out there. This is one of the tools that we're going to talk through today. Today is the quick templates. And so we actually have a tool that we use today that's actually, you know what, believe it or not, I didn't even put it on this list. I should actually edit this slide as we speak. There's actually another tool here that I should put on here. It's called DAX.PowerBI-Tips. But these are all the various tools or applications that we build at Power BI Tips that are just free. They're part of the community. You have themes where you can go build custom color themes. You have a gallery where you can go look at and find interesting color palettes from the community and visualize them on a Power BI report. And we have a handful of other visuals and things that we build out. We have a couple products called scrims and products. All of what we focus on is trying to make your experience better and easier to build around the Power BI ecosystem. So anyways, this is a list of other tools that we have that we think would be very relevant for you to check out if you haven't seen them, and play around with a bunch of them and see if you like using the tools. So with that, let's get into our topic for today, which is all of our agenda. So we'll go to our agenda real quick. So these are the kind of things we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through what is the anatomy of DAX and how does that work with building like a basic function, simple things like a sum, or, we know you know how to write DAX like that, but it's, again, just building out a simple function that would be used inside DAX. Now, once you build a simple function like a sum, then you'd be thinking, well, where else could I use this kind of templating mechanism? Essentially and a more elaborate way of doing quick measures. Well, why not use pre-built templates or templates built by the community or others in the community? So this is where I think this idea, this world's fastest DAX, gets to be very interesting to me, because I don't have to be the only person creating templates. Anyone can create a template, and we can then use that DAX anywhere you want in any model. That was my main challenge. So for those of you who are familiar, in Power BI Desktop, there's a quick measures feature. You can go in, click a little button, pick which measure you're interested in, and then automatically add a measure into your data model. Well, imagine if we could do that where I could write the custom DAX, and then I could share that with my team, anything like that. Anyways, that's what we're going to talk about today. Then we're going to talk about how would you build your own template. So now that we've used some templates from the community, what would be a way that we could go create or make our own templates, and how could I contribute back into the community? We're always looking for more people to contribute what they know, what they're learning in DAX, and help us build a better library of good DAX practices. Okay. With that, I don't like slides. I'm not a slides guy. That's it. All the pretty stuff is done. Let's jump in right away to demos. So let me get rid of my slide deck here. And then we will jump into my sample data file here. And just to start off here very briefly, we're going to use a very simplified star schema data model around, oops, my little just zipped right off the screen there. All right, there we go. Let's just initially talk about, hey, let's look at the data model that's going on here. So first and foremost, here's the data model. We have a very simple star schema, dimensions around the outside and a fact table in the middle. And we have this kind of disassociate table that we'll use for a single example. So the model is pretty straightforward. So we'll start here with this as our data model. All right. First things first, let's go through the intro. The anatomy of DAX. I'm going to go through a couple basics here, and then we'll try to figure out, okay, well, how do we interpret this? So this is my slide that I use around just explaining to people would you build a DAX measure? The measure name is on the left-hand side. You get functions, and the functions are allowed to be able to be used inside the parameter bar. So in here, you have the sum. Let me make sure I have a zoom out here on, so we can zoom in here. Yeah, got it. Cool. All right, so in here we have the sum, which is our function, living right here in the middle. There are many, many functions you can have, but that's something that's kind of standard, comes from DAX. Then what we'd have is we'd have additional properties around different data fields or data columns that we would potentially use here. So in this example, we have a table name on the left-hand side and a column of the table on the right-hand side. Now, why is this important, right? Why do I go through the basics here? Well, the idea here is, let's imagine I wanted to take this simple formula of sum, and I wanted to move it between any data model. What things would vary or be different in each data model? Well, likely the name of the measure that we're creating would potentially be different. They would maybe not be the same. So I might want to be able to adjust the name on a per data model, sharing that solution. And then in addition to that, well, I might want to change definitely the table name, and particularly the column name, because these are going to be different for every single data model. But everything else in this formula would be the same. I would still use the same sum. I'd still want to have, at a minimum, a table name and a column name already applied into the formula. So this is what we start thinking about. When we start thinking about things programmatically, we would like to be able to share data between different data sets, and this is a method by which we can do that. So let me jump out of here. Let's build a simple sum inside this data model. So first things first, I'm going to go back to my data model here. And let me go open up some tables here on the right-hand side. Let me hide some unhidden columns here. I don't need to unhide everything. So let's just turn the hidden off. Here we go. And then let me just get rid of some old measures I don't think I'm going to need anymore. So let me delete these out of here. Sure, delete it. Get rid of it. Model. Yep. Okay. So I have a data model. So first things first, right? Let's say I want to grab something from my product table. So I can grab my product table over here. I have my little list of products, and I love this feature now. Now that I can zoom around in Power BI Desktop, this makes it so much easier to present things. So here's my product table. We can make an implied measure by grabbing the sales column and dragging it over to the table and asking Power BI to aggregate or summarize that measure, that column. So now this is an implied sum of sales. Okay, fine. I don't really love implicit measures. It's not really a best practice. And if we're looking at implicit measures, not the name of my podcast. So why would I use them? Kind of thing. So let's move on. If we wanted to make an explicit measure around sales, we would then create a new measure by right-clicking on sales, and now you can actually enter in the name of it. So let me make this big as well, so we can see the measure here. And let's just go, total sales measure. It's going to make something there. And so now here, I would then just write out what I want, sum of something. So let's go here, the sales column. And again, my naming schema is just so on point here because I have the fact sales table with the sales column in it. And I love this. It's so big. So I can't even see the name of the column here. It's so large. If I can force this thing to give me what I want. Fact sales. There we go. That's the column I want. All right, then I can close that off, and that's my formula. Boom, done. Now I've explicitly made a measure. I've created one that I can use on my report. Great. But is there a way I can do that without writing a lick of code, any code? And for anyone who was, using the new desktop release for, actually, let me pull Greg and Dustin in here real quick because I want to ask you guys this question directly. So, guys, have you downloaded the latest version of Power BI Desktop? Yeah?
I have, yeah.
Okay. Have you played with the new quick measures functionality?
Just a little bit. I was kind of curious how that's going to kind of imply or be layered in with this. So
that's a great question. So that just came out. And so this is a really neat feature that's just like happening right off the press here. If you go into modeling and you click the new button up here in the upper left-hand corner, so the modeling ribbon, clicking the new quick measure button up here, when you click this, it gives you what you used to see as quick measures, which is basically, here's a list of measures that Microsoft gave to you and said, you just pick one of these things and we'll do something for you. We'll help you build stuff. Okay. Not that bad. Then there's this new thing called suggestions. You can say total sales for Vallejo, I think is what I could say, because this is from the data model. And then I could hit generate. And what this thing will do is it'll try to generate some DAX and create something for me. And then you'll see down here, it's created my calculate sum of fact sales and then keep filters for my dim product. I don't really know if that's right. So this has been my problem with the quick measures that Microsoft gives you here when you use the natural language, because it gives me results and I look at the formula going, I'm not sure that's exactly what I was thinking for my measure. So maybe that's not what I want. So what we're talking about is going to be different from all this. This is what I think. This is what should have been the quick measures gallery, or the quick measures that are in Power BI Desktop. So let's keep going a little bit further. Let's use our tool. So what we have to do is, one of the things you'll have to note here is this is a tool that we're going to use that is an external tool. It comes in two parts. Power BI Side Tools, which is the application that Dieter has made. And this is an external application you can install in your Power BI computer. And then the one that we're going to use specifically is called DAX Generator. Now, these two tools can be installed automatically by using a tool that I've created called Business Ops. It's basically operations for the business. You can get a whole bunch of external tools and have them automatically installed on your machine by installing one big tool that will install a lot of other applications. So that being said, I'm going to bring up a couple URLs here because I actually grabbed a couple, I think. Where did I put them here? And my computer doesn't seem to have those screens up right now. Oh, here we go. This one. Nope, that's not it either. Where did it go? I'm looking for, this window. Okay, I should have closed down a couple windows. Here we go. So Power BI side tools, here's the web URL. I'll grab that one and throw it in the chat here real quick so that everyone can have the chat for where you could find Power BI side tools. And then also, if you want to go download Business Ops is from my website, powerbi.tips. You can download all these external tools directly from Business Ops. It's an operational system to help you install a lot of and manage your external tools right inside a single program. So there's probably, I think we've found at least 45, 50 different external tools that we've already collected and pulled together into one big installer. So that's what this tool is meant to do. Once you've installed this application, and I'm going to skip that step here for the sake of argument for this presentation. Once you've installed that, you can add the DAX Generator. So DAX Generator is the quick, the external tool that we will be using. And when I click this, it'll take it a moment here. And what it will do is it will jump into the application. And in here, you'll be able to see, oh, there are built-in templates. And it's a little window here that connects to Power BI Desktop. So Power BI Desktop has to be running first. And then when you run Desktop, you can then run this tool on top of it. So the idea here is we can go in here and we can go to some of my templates that I've made. And in here, I have some simple examples. So let's go down here. All these are templates that I've made previously. I have one called a simple sum. So in the tool here now, we can then look in it and we can, let's just go through the tool very briefly here. On the left-hand side, we have a couple buttons. We have different kind of templates. That's what the little folder icon means. You can use the built-in ones. You can create your own. You can add a Git repository or folder location. Like if you're going to go to the internet and download a Git repo of all these different templates, you can just go get them. And they're just right here in the tool, which is actually kind of slick. So in addition to that, you have these other add button. So if you click that, it'll then, it'll allow you to create a new template with my website, powerbi.tips. You can add your own template from DAX Templates, or you can add a template from the data model. Then also you have a wizard that will actually help you create or use one of these templates. It's kind of like a step-by-step helping you select things and then automatically adding tools directly into or adding your data columns right to the measure. Okay, now to the main area here. The template window here, you can just click on the measures here. And as I click on these different folders or these files here, every time I do so, it's updating the UI here to show me what is in the template. What is it doing? There's a brief description. This is creating a simple aggregation count of a fact table. And if I click on the simple sum one, you'll see that I made a template. I even have a couple reference URLs of where you can go get and use this template. So you actually can have links to information as well around, these are links that are available to you to help you give you more information about how the measure was built or who created it or any kind of other thing you want. You can add URLs in there as well. In the instructions area, if you click that now, you can have any kind of instructions. Now, this is a very simple example, so we don't need a lot of instructions. And then finally, the template. Okay. This is the DAX statement, but allowing us to then replace various items in here. So in this case, looking here, the underscore area called table column, that is the object that we're going to replace. But we want to go into our data model and explore what's in our data model in Power BI Desktop and grab the data field and just inject that directly into this formula. So to do so, I can do a couple things at the top here. I can adjust the measure name by changing the name of the column up here, sum of column, and we could probably say, well, we know we're going to do the sales column, so we'll do sum of sales here. So I can just adjust the name. And then we can add down below, right here, we can actually add the table and column definition. So when I click this, a new window pops out. This brand new window is the definition of your data model. It matches what we see in Power BI Desktop. So now I can go through here and go down to my fact sales table, and the only column that's not hidden is my sales column. So if I click that, the model is smart enough to know, oh, this is exactly what you wanted. And it will auto inject a data element from your data model right into the DAX statement. Next, I would click the big red button called Generate. And what this will do now is it now will generate me a full DAX statement. This is the name of the measure on the left-hand side here. And now we have the actual column from our data model automatically injected. Now, if there's multiple data elements you want to add, you can, up right-hand corner, select a parent table. So this is where you will inject this information. So I'm going to say I want to put this back in my fact sales table. And what now I can do is on the very bottom here, I can now click the create or update button. So what this will do, if I click create or update, boom. And you'll notice here, there's a message that says, hey, we've added the measure. And then if you look over my data model, my sum of sales column just appeared. So that's the exact same measure I made. So if I minimize this and go back over to Power BI Desktop, there's my formula in all its very large text format. And you don't need these other text items here. You can get rid of them if you don't want to. It's not liking me downsizing this thing. There we go. Okay. So then I can delete all this text out if I don't want to, and then there's my formula. So now that I have that formula in here, I can just use it like everything else. Just grab that sum of sales, drop it right back on my table, and boom, I can check my number. It's working. So it's as simple as that. Pretty easy to do an addition into the DAX statement. So we can make a DAX template, those little files there. We can use them and add more DAX into our data model. Okay. Humor me here, everyone. This is a simple example, right? Let me pull the guys in here for a second. All right, gentlemen. You've seen the initial demo piece here. I'm going to pick your brains here a moment. Where could you see this being utilized in your companies or in things that you do today? Where would this be a good example of what I could use this for other things that would be DAX related? I mean, that was one simple sum. Are there any kind of DAX statements that you write over and over and over again, or using again and again in multiple models? Any examples?
Year to date, month to date, year over year.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah.
all those things.
A whole pile of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And year to date would potentially take the same measure, right? You'd have a base measure, right? So there's like a base. So even thinking about the code here, right? In that example, the year to date or month to date, that's a formula that would have those repeating kind of values. You want to just create them all at once. But the base formula potentially would be just a measure called sum of sales, right? So we would start with the same measure, and then all I would be adding is multiple objects. So what you can do here, or as you think about this, you're like, oh my gosh, well, what if I have like a model that I want to add all these like normal time calculations over and over again? This could automate a lot of that. And as we get closer to the end here, we can do some really crazy cool stuff here as well. So great example, Greg. I didn't want to leave it open there for you, Dustin, as well. Any thoughts around any examples that you had thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I was thinking. Different like date time calculations and
Yep.
some more like calendar or date tables where you might be expanding upon that.
Good. These are where most people's minds go, because those are the demos that I have in place. So it's really good you guys mentioned those things, because these are the kind of calculations that we're going to want to regularly do over and over again. So excellent. All right, let me go back to presenting here. All right, so moving over to another example. So this one I like to call my stars demo. So let's imagine here I have products and a rating. Right. So this is, maybe I'm collecting data about something. Maybe I have something else here that is based in stars. Right. I have sent out a survey. Everyone's looked at the survey. They're all happy with it. And now we're coming back and saying, hey, wait a minute. I want to graphically show the average star rating for my different products. So you can do this in DAX, believe it or not. You can actually add a DAX statement that will put text icons inside a DAX statement and basically do some text formatting to make this value work. So let's go back again to our quick measures. So I have an example for this one. Let's see if I have text items here. And I have one here for star ratings 1 to 5. This one's a little bit more elaborate. The template is a little bit more complex, but the input is pretty much simple. We still have a measure name, and we're looking at a single table and column definition for what that star numerical value would be. So again, we're right back where we were. We can click in the little green area here. we can go down to our star ratings table and click the rating column. And so you'll see right away, it has now added my column name and table definition right to that measure. And if we want to look at the instructions here, there may be little instructions here. Yeah, here's the instructions. We can read that and say, hey, this template uses a unicar, so not unicorn, a unicar value that is actually from the text, any kind of unicar you can use. All those values can be entered. And you can show a star or a hollow star, meaning it's not fully filled in, based on a value from 1 to 5. So the instructions here are select a column that has values from 1 to 5. Okay, we'll click generate now. And this is why this is the world's fastest DAX, right? This is why we like this tool, because what happens now is I have multiple variables with documentation how this DAX statement works. I have the name of the measure at the top here. We've injected our column here for the average rating. So it's going to take an average or an aggregation across things. And then in the middle section here, it's going to define a bunch of other text things. Now, I'm not this smart. I did not figure this out. I had to give mad credit to Chris Webb, who actually came up with this idea down on the Power BI community. So this is a Chris Webb generated statement here. And I may have adjusted a couple things here or there to make it a bit easier for us to use inside the Power BI desktop tool. But boom, it's already done. You don't need to write any DAX. You don't even know how to write stuff. You just need to know what is the column you need and what data is in it. So now we select the parent table. We're going to put it in the star ratings table, and I'm going to hit create or update. Assuming everything went well, yes, we did. The stars measure has been created. So then I'll minimize this, and then I'll drag my measure back over to my data table, and bada bing, bada boom, we've got an answer. So this is why I say this is the world's fastest DAX, right? Once we find a pattern, something that works, you can now reuse this pattern over and over and over again. So anyone I want, I could give this template to Greg, and Greg could go into his model and say, oh, I was doing surveys on my Power BI reports, and my team is going to tell me whether or not they like what I'm building or not. And so he's going to use this star mechanism to indicate on a table what people are enjoying about content or not enjoying about content that's coming inside Greg's arena. Now, you'll notice in here for a second, there's a little bit of a whoops. At the bottom here, you'll notice that we have an 11 at the total, but the star rating is 3. So if you notice here, if I instead have an average on 2, 1, 3, and 5, what it's doing, because the averaging of this measure is averaging the total of all the objects. The average value, not star rating by count, is actually being averaged down at the bottom here. So in order to see that, I would bring the rating column over, and then I would change it from its default summarization to an average value. And this is actually what it's doing. So it's actually graphically showing the average value of that lower item. So it does make sense. So we can have a bunch of stars, and then we can show an average as well. Now, I will admit, we're not doing like weighted averages, right? So if you had 1,000 surveys at 5 stars, we're not weighting any of that. But knowing that we have this capability, you could build a weighted average on part of the star ratings. So you could add that in there as well. All right, moving on. Let's go on to our next demo. Okay, star ratings are cool. It's text-based. It's kind of interesting. What's next? What else can we do with this tool? Well, I'm glad that you asked. I do this all the stinking time. Every model I work on, I'm going in and I'm turning off the auto calendar feature of Power BI Desktop because I like to have my own doggone date calendars. And I like to build them my way, the way I like to build them. So, you know, if you're in desktop and you're getting all those little hierarchy date calendar things, you can go into options and settings, options. Once you get into options, you go into the report settings. Actually, down here, it's probably this one, report settings. And where is it? No, it's data load, isn't it? Data load. Yeah, there it is. Auto date time. It's on by default. So I just turn it off on everything. I never use auto date time. But that means every data model I have typically needs some sort of date table in it to help me build all of my structure around or all my measures around. Well, that's, again, a lot of code. And this is what I used to do. I used to go back to my website, be like, oh crap, I know I blogged this somewhere. Okay, let's go back to Google, Google the thing, date calendar in DAX, look through a couple articles. Okay, that's the one I want. Click the article, boom, we got it. So took me a little bit of time, but I could get to the answer. Well, now it's all built into the tool. It's all in Power BI Desktop. External tools, DAX Generator, bring it back up. So now we have a whole bunch of date calendars. If I go into this time folder, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of date related things here. So let's minimize these Gregorian time calculators, right, for now. Let's go to some of the calendars here. So here's one that's called Calendar Auto Date Table. You can look at the instructions, create a table used on the Calendar Auto function, enter the name of the date calendars. This is a very simple one. Let's see, if I thought I had another one that was a little bit more complex here. This is one from Marco Russo. So in this one, let's try this one. We'll try this one next. So this one says, add a date field in your date table, and then add a date field in your fact table. So pick a date field from your date table, and then pick the date field from your fact table. Your table will be named dim date. Here's the template. Oh, that's not what I was looking for. Where's the bigger one here? This is the one I'm looking for. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Sorry, let's read the instructions better. Okay, this is constructing a basic calendar dimension. 1, pick your month of your fiscal year as an integer. 2, pick the first day of the week as an integer. Sunday equals 0s, Monday equal 1. 3, pick a date field in your fact table that contains the dates, a range of dates for which you want to base the calendar. So now I'm going to look at one single table, identify all the minimum and maximum date ranges for that one table, and then build my date table. This one's pretty handy. So right away, the table name is going to be called dimension date, and I don't really need the underscore here. So I'm just going to call it dimension calendar. Okay. The first fiscal month, any value you want, I'm going to leave it 7. First day of the week is going to be 0, which would be a Sunday for me. And next, I would click on the fact field for the date columns. So we have table and column combination. So I'm going to go down to my fact sales table, and I think I need a column name there. So let me cancel that real quick. Let me go back to my data model real quick. Let me just do a quick unhide here. View hidden. I probably need a date column in here. Let's unhide that as well so we can see it. So one thing you will note about this tool is if it's hidden in the data model, the tool cannot see it. So I'm trying to unhide it here. Why is it not unhiding in my desktop? Let's go over here to the data model section. Date. There it goes. Now it's showing. All right, let's try that again. Let's go back over here. Let's go ahead and click the model. There we go. So now I have in the fact table the date column by which we will base our date list off of. So I click on that. We hit generate. Barring this all DAX works correctly, we'll hit create or update. Now you'll notice this time there is no parent table. So this time we're not creating a measure. We're actually creating an entire table inside Power BI. This is something that Quick Measures today does not do. They don't let you create new tables by using Quick Measures today. So we'll hit create or update. Boom, it's just that fast. Dim calendar has been created. Refresh the table in desktop. You'll notice right away, whoops, this thing needs to be manually refreshed. Get a little warning here. Let's refresh the data model. We'll hit refresh now. Boom. We now get a dim calendar, all of our dates in there, and then there's my dates DAX statement. Boom. Does not like zooming in my DAX statements. That's it. Already written. I don't want to type this by hand or copy paste it from somewhere else. Now let's see if it works, right? So that, yeah, great. You add a DAX. Like, does it actually work? Does it do things? All right. So I do know this. We've made our date table. It's going to be in here. We got to make sure we match it up to something. So let's grab our value of dates. That's not the one I want. Where did my date table go? There we go. Bring this guy over here. I'm going to bring my date column and link it by date. Assuming I did my job right, it's going to link it by date and date, one to many, single. Yep, let's go. Bada bing, bada boom, we're done. And with that, we've got a date table already linked up one to many, just the way we want. So we can actually hide this old other date table because this is old junky and who needs that? Let's get rid of him and just leave our new one now. Go back to our data model. And now we have dates. And now we can go grab our sum of sales that we were using earlier. Let me hide some columns here just to make things hidden. Let me add that in here and we'll grab our sum of sales that we made earlier. Bada bing, bada boom. We got data. So that's it. It was easy as that. All right. I think we got a question coming around. Let's take a quick pause. Any questions that are coming across the chat, gentlemen?
So when you connected to the fact sales table in the DAX tool, not in Power BI, was that just using the date range to contemplate like kind of your bookends on
exactly?
On the date?
Yeah, you'll see here what it's doing is it's trying to find, making a variable right here. So in this formula, it's saying, hey, let's go to that fact sales table and let's get the minimum date on that entire table. So it's going to say, find me the smallest date value. And then what it does is it uses down here below inside the formula, it's going to calendar auto, but calendar auto will build a date range for everything in the model. It'll build you a list of all dates. So if you have 1900 and you have year 99999, it'll build you a date calendar for all of those dates, which is not really what we want. In reality, what we want is we want only the listed date range starting in our fact table, maybe going forward. So that way, as you refresh your data set, every time it will rebuild this date table. And every time it rebuilds the date table, we now have a fresh copy of a date table. And this is one of the things I find that's kind of interesting. When we do constant refreshing of our data models, we can actually have a date table that has changing dimensions in it. Like, if today was day 0 and yesterday was -1, well, when you refresh the report, tomorrow becomes day 1 and yesterday becomes day 1. So you can start having other kind of really interesting date time calculator things that occur in your date calendar that makes it easier for you to build measures in other parts of your program. Like, for example, let's say I wanted to build a measure that would take the sum of the last 3 days. That's a little bit more complex from a measure standpoint. But if you have a calendar that's always updating and always adjusting what is the definition of the last 3 days, you could say, well, yesterday was -1, 2 days ago was -2, and 3 days ago was -3. So there's this concept of like an index, a date index that you could use. And that way, every time you refresh the model, as the days change, that index will automatically be updating and giving you the most recent last 3 days worth of data. So there's other kind of really creative things you can do from like a time manipulation calculation piece that simplifies it by having a better data model.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. So like to always say it's like the current period.
Yep.
So whenever somebody opens up the report, it's always going to be what they're looking for. So
yeah, and
cool.
Paul's on thank you very much, Paul, for chatting that one on LinkedIn. You said I use the month offset field for that. So he does like month offsetting, right? Month 1 is next month, month 0 is this month -1 is last month. So then you could always do, well, I always want the last 2 complete months of data, easy peasy. You just do month -1, month -2, and those are always the last 2 months of data that you're ever going to need and use and build. So excellent.
Yeah.
All right. I have one more kind of good use case here, and then we're going to transition away from using the templates to now, okay, how do you build your own now? How would you build your own templates moving forward? All right, so let's keep going. On to the next example. This one is an example that is kind of interesting. So in this table, I have listed dates, and you'll notice here in my date list, each list of date only has a gap of the entire month. So it's basically the first day of the month has data in it. Now, okay, not bad, but there are occasions where I would want to show every single day in a table or visual or something else. So there are occurrences where you actually need to show more data that's in the data set. Now, let's be a little bit creative here. If I grab the date field from the fact table, we can see every single date in that fact table is the first of the month. September 1st, October 1st, November 1st. Okay, no big deal. If I go to my date calendar and grab the date column, the date calendar has a continuous list of dates from the first day that it finds all the way through to the end. So even though my fact table starts at 9/1, I have all these other dates that have no data to them. Now, the interesting thing about DAX and how DAX runs inside your Power BI data models, if I bring a measure to a date table that has no data for that day, the expression will render a blank value. And what I mean by that, if I grab this total sales we made earlier and drag it into this visual, you'll see that now the tables are identical. All those dates that had no calculated value for them returned a blank value. So those rows of data from the date side were blanked out. By default, that's how it works. If I click the caret next to date and open that up and then grab the option here that says show items with no data, this is now saying show me all the blanks. And now you'll see how disparate this is. There's a lot of values that have not been calculated, and they will only show on the first of the month starting on 9/1/2020. Here we go, 9/1/20. There's my data. So that's what's really occurring here. I have a date table that has a lot more records than my fact table. Not a problem, but maybe I need to show some more records there. So I'm going to turn that back off. I'm going to say, I'm going to turn off the sales column and say show items with no data. I'm going to again turn that feature off because I don't want that. Turn that off. Now, there's a measure where I could force a measure to calculate or present some data that would show if no data can be resolved, it shows me a blank value. If data can be resolved, it would show me a dash or a 0, kind of whatever I determine. Okay, back over to quick measures. Go back in here. Go back into, it's in my text one. Where is my force one here? Filters. Is it time-based? No, I don't think so. It's totals, maybe. Ah, yeah, here it is. Force measure to dash. So what this does is this now intakes an input measure as a value into this data set. So I'm gonna add a measure here, and then once I add this, we'll click on that, go here, and now you'll see when I do this, the data model has changed. Because the template is smart enough to say, hey, I expect you to enter in a measure into the formula. These are all the measures in the data model that are formula-based. So now I can go in here and say, okay, let's go back to our total sales measure. And we will now force this one to be a dash dash. So I'll hit generate. And you'll see right here, it changed the name of the measure, total sales force to dash dash on the end there. Right here, dash dash. And then it gives you my formula. Again, not a very complicated formula, but one that you just got to write out. So this saves me the time of having to rewrite this every single time I want to use this. Again, this is a really common pattern that I will use over and over and over again. So I'll hit create or update. I'll put it in my fact sales table again, and boom. Force has been added to my data model. All right. Over here, I'm going to now add to this table my new measure. And as I add my new measure, you'll notice the data has now adjusted. So everywhere I had a blank value, when it couldn't express that value as a number, it's a blank. Now, one caveat here, I do not recommend you use this kind of formula inside a table, because this can make your data model run out of memory really quick, because you're now, instead of rendering only the data you need for the visual, you're now rendering every single piece of data inside this table. That's not advisable. So where do I use this most often? Most often I use this when I have a KPI card. So if I'll put a card on the page here, and let's add my force sales to 0. So right now, the measure is easily able to calculate something here. Actually, let me put 2 cards. Let me do it with 2 cards here to make it even clearer. There's 1 card. Let me make another one. 1 more card. There we go. There's my second card. I'm going to use the old measure here, okay? The numbers are totally the same together. But if someone's clicking around a data set or data model, and they happen to click on something that, I can't calculate that in my measure, now we have a problem. So I'm going to click on a data point that we do have. Yes, it still works. 55.59 million. Good. And now if you click another item in here, 3/3/2020, boom, you get this thing called blank. I do not like this. Not cool. Because that's not really helpful to the end user, right? I'd rather just show a nice, pretty little dash dash. So now this can do that. So now we have a nice little dash dash value here. And so when we use a card, I can use the same measure, and we can just rename the measure here. Let's call it total sales, total sales. And so now it says total sales. Oops, wrong visual. Let's try it on the right visual. Total sales. And now it'll then give me a dash when I need to. So now I can use two measures. In the data set itself, I can just use the value measure, the measure that doesn't force anything to zero or dash dash. And in the cards, I can use a dash dash that then protects me against a user selecting something that they can't see and getting that weirdo blank symbol. So I think that's it. Let me just pause here. Any quick questions that came across the radar, gentlemen?
I think just making or stressing the point not to have that in your table data, because
Yes.
that can really bring things down quickly.
I have made measures, tables that have run out of memory. To give you a nice little memory. Oops, you're out of memory here. And my little tiny table here of like, I don't know, 1,000 rows, not going to be a big deal. But if you're dealing with a table that has like, I don't know, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million rows, you don't want to be doing that kind of stuff. You want to use that dash versus the blank items. So
one thing Paul just brought up, which is a kind of a good point too, and I'm interested in your opinion on it, but what is the downside of having it say blank?
There's not. I mean, to me, it's just the report user request, right?
Right.
They see the word blank and they're like, it's broken. Yeah. It's not broken. It's working exactly as it should. It's not my call at that point, right? It's usually the report user or the report consumer it's their decision of how it should look. And, they're like, well, I don't want it to say blank. Well, what other alternatives do you have?
Yeah.
If you don't want to say blank, this is the solution for that. So it's more of like an aesthetic and a UI thing, right? It doesn't really make sense to say blank. You could put something else that says like no value or NA, or you could put a bunch of other things in there that you want. I mean, this is just a simple example of one type of dash dash you'd want. Or you could just force it to 0, right? No value, 0, right? By default, it's just going to show blank. So just as another way of solving that same kind of problem from a visual and UI standpoint.
Yeah, I usually use zeros in that example to just give them $0 sales or whatnot.
And you could kind of also hack that together by saying, hey, I take my measure plus 0. Right. But again, you start running into that problem again where that becomes very expensive on your main data table. If you put that in a table, every single row will always have a 0 in it, and that's not a good idea either. Yeah. So in this case, I like having measures that are very specific to formatting measures that I'm going to use in cards and show once, because it's going to calculate that value once, as opposed to in the table, it's going to calculate for every single row of the data table.
When you organize your measures within your actual fields pane, are you putting them in different folders then?
100%. 100%. I love the folders. I mean, this is a very quick and easy example here, so I don't actually have a lot of folders. I love the folders, and I will make multiple folders. If I'm doing any kind of textual formatting, I will make a single folder for text formatted measures. And then every measure that goes in there is, it'll have something like total sales forced to dash dash, total sales forced to 0. I'll be very descriptive in the measure name, knowing that I can adjust the name in the card in the report pane. Right. I'll make the model easy to consume and for people to reuse it.
I do that too, as well as like measures that are kind of like original measures, where it's like you're actually calculating something versus measures that are referencing other measures. I'll put those in folders too.
Exactly right. Yep. Exactly right.
I guess the only thing I had on this was the replacing a number with text. I guess I've done the zeros before. I haven't done it with text, or you put the dash dash in there. I didn't know you could do that. So
yeah, DAX technically doesn't have a data type. One of Greg Baldini's recent blogs on Power BI Tips talks about how DAX can actually transition between data types in individual rows of the calculation that is occurring inside the tabular model. Kind of an interesting blog, way over my head. He was very smart about how he wrote everything. But the idea is that a measure doesn't always have the same data type is kind of interesting. And you can get weird errors if you're trying to calculate something with variables and other stuff. If you're not mindful of the fact that that might not be a string. That actually might be a number, or that number might actually not be a number. It might be a string. And you'll get DAX failures in certain scenarios when it's calculating something funny. So just be mindful of that. Cool. All right, with that, let's move on to our final. So we've talked about a hot second here about how to like use the tool, how to use the measures in here. Well, how do we get more of them? Where can we build this stuff from? So let's go into the bonus area here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition away from our DAX statements, and we're going to move over to one of the tools that I created to help people generate their own DAX statements. So I'm going to pull up my browser here. We're going to go over to the website called dax.powerbi.tips. This is the website. And so what this is a tool to help you build the template, right? I think Elon Musk said it best, right? It's not hard building the prototype. It's hard building the machine that makes the machine, right? It's not hard building a car, but it's hard to make a machine that can regularly kick out thousands of cars per day, right? That's the hard part of building and manufacturing. Greg knows this. Greg's in manufacturing. He knows the how to make it repeatable. That's the hard part. So what we tried to do is we tried to tackle this problem as well. We actually started with this part of the program and kind of refined the tool side of it to use this as well. So this is where we would go get the how to make our own template. So I'm going to make one here very quickly and just show you how this tool works. So we can name the template, Mike's super cool template. And then you can add a description here of what this is describing what your template is going to do. I'm going to make a demo, and that will be all we're going to use here. And then from here, we can then go in, and now we talk about the parameters. We talked about earlier about naming the measure name itself, having that parameterized, and potentially parameterizing things in the formula, so the formula bars. So this is a placeholder for the name of the parameter. This is the thing that we're going to do the replacing with. This is your variable, essentially. You can give it a name. I'm just going to call it a table and column. That's what I'm going to list there. You could potentially set a default value. If you don't, it's not required. Leave blank if you don't want to have a default. So for example, in that one template we saw around, hey, we're going to make a Sunday a 0 and a Sunday 7, right? If you want your start of your week to occur on Monday, that would mean you would need to change that value from a 0 to a 1. Or if you wanted a Wednesday, it would be a number 3. So this is a way for the template to have input parameters that users can adjust. Then you would want to add a description for the parameter. This would be select a table and column. And then we can define what type of data comes into the parameter. So in this case, since I'm selecting a table and column, this is just going to be a string. It's just going to be a text value. Now you could add in like a number, right? You can force the tool. The tool is smart enough to know that, hey, your input field can only be a number in that instance, or only be a date field. And then next you have to define, okay, what of the data model are we going to select? So since I'm just using the data type of the parameter as a string, next we define, okay, well, I'm looking for a couple different options. Oops, let's try that again. Zoom in again. You can select a single measure. So this will just be just the name of the measure, or you can select the table and column combination. So what it will do is it'll let you select a column, but when the tool brings back that column to you, it'll parse it in a way that shows you it's the table name and column. Or I can just get the table name or just a column name with no table. So sometimes you may want to parameterize both of those options. You may want to parameterize the table portion or just the name portion. And then there's other input selections. You could force users to use a date. It could be a user inputted field. It could be like a Boolean, true or false. So in this case, we're going to actually just use a table and column. So now down here, I'm going to rewrite my DAX statement. Now, I don't write DAX in this tool. Actually, where I write my DAX is actually in Power BI Desktop. Realistically, let's be realistic here. I write it in Tabletator 3 and then port it somewhere else. So if you're not using Tabletator 3, we can write it right here. So here's my sum of sales measure here, right? This is the measure that I wrote and it works. So typically I'll build a measure first in Power BI Desktop, make sure that it works, and then I'll copy it out, Control C, and go back over to the tool, and I would paste it here. Now, a couple things to note. I'm just talking about the name of the measure, so I will get rid of the second half of this and cut that out. and put that in the second half. So the name of the measure gets its own object, sum of sales, and then the formula is just like you would write in Excel, equals the formula. And this is what I think makes the most logical sense to me. The thing I haven't done yet, though, is I haven't added any parameters. So what I want to do is I'm going to go get this parameter 1 up top here, Control C this, copy it. I go back down to my data table here, and we're going to say, oh, let's replace this table and column object with my parameter. Boom. There's a whole bunch of like little blue things here because it thinks I'm misspelling things right. So I'm going to ignore all those. But now I have the sum of parameter 1. And you'll note here on the far right-hand side, I have 2 sections here. The top part of this is saying, hey, these are the parameters you've built. One is called table and column, and it equals this value, parameter 1. What it does is it takes the expressed parameters at the top and does a text replace down below so you can see what the final equation should look like for whatever reason. So what I could also do is instead of saying sum of sales, I could also parameterize the name. So now what this will do is I could add a parameter to, this is a sum of this table and column name, and then have the table and column name entered into the sum below. Then you can add your description, blah, blah, blah. And then where do you want to place the measure? Blank, leave blank. Do you want to hide it by default? No. You can set some formatting if you want. General. Do you want to use parentheses for negative value? No. Do you want to? No. Okay. Now we're done. And then you can add some tagging. So this is not necessarily part of what required, but this is kind of more in helping others find your templates. So this is going to be a text field. Actually, this is going to be a sum. Totals. Get rid of text. And then I can enter things about my author name. So this is Mike. I can have instructions here, blah, 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 blah. Put some text. And then if you have any URLs you want to go here. So that's it. You've basically created a template, and now you can hit download the file. And what it will do now is it'll open the file, and you'll see if I click on the file, Control-Shift-F, this is the template that is generated. So you don't have to write a lick of JSON. That's like my thing. I make tools so you don't have to deal with JSON. That's pretty much all I do. Excuse me. So this is the outputted template. So we need to go get that template into our tool now. So I go back into DAX Generator. I downloaded my template here. If I just drag and drop this directly into my template window here, you'll see that it just added my tool. It did a little refresh there, and boom, Mike's super cool tool just appeared. So that's the tool I just made, and I dragged it right back into the desktop here, and that's my instructions. I have my description, my instructions, then template is right there. And then when I click on my data model, again, right back into the data model, I can then click the fact sales column, hit generate, and we'll see right there, boom, sum of the column name or table and column name of that table. Now, granted, my example's not too amazing here, right? We could do some other fancy things, right? So what we could also do here is let's adjust this a little bit more. Let's go back to the website. So let's go back up here real quick. Let's say we don't want a table and column combination. What if we wanted to do just the table or just the column because we want to break those two things apart? Well, you can do that. If you click the little plus sign here for parameters, by doing this, I can make a second parameter. Now, it defaults it with item number 1. We can make that item number 2. Okay, so this is parameter 2. And now we're going to change this one originally. We're going to say this top one will be table name. So I'll say table name like that. And I'll just change this to be the table. The next one here, we'll do the same thing. This will be column name. And then add a little bit, we don't want a default parameter. We want a little description, blah, blah, blah. This will also be a string, but this time we're going to select the column. So now I have parameter 1 and parameter 2. So parameter 1 can be the sum of my table name. So I actually have to write this out a little bit differently. So we'll use the syntax for measures and columns. I'm going to add the little ticks and the little braces first. And then I'm going to grab parameter 1. This is now my table name. Will be injected here. And then we have parameter 2, which I'm going to Control C and go down here and Control V. That's my parameter 2. And then this is probably should also be parameter number 2 as well. So we go back over to the right-hand side. Now we've enhanced the formula even further. So we said, okay, it's going to be sum of a column name now, and now the table name in quotes and the column name in braces. So now when I download this file, again, gives me my next file. We're going to grab the next file, back over to Power BI. Yeah, let's overwrite it. Fine. So now I've overwritten the tool, and now I have two input parameters. And when I select the table name, I go right to fact sales, and I go right to column name, and click the sales column. And that's it. Template, let's generate it. So now I have a new template that just says sum of sales, and then there's my measure. All right. We are like literally right on time. That was about as closely timed as I could get it right there. That is the demo of the world's fastest DAX. We've kind of ripped through it fairly quickly here. And that was our bonus demo piece there, is being able to make your own DAX template itself. Oh, you know what? Well, I'm going to just pause right there. Do we have a bit more time, Greg and Dustin? Should we go a little bit further? I have one more thing that might be relevant, but maybe pause for questions initially first.
I think we have a little time yet, right?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit more time. I haven't seen anything necessarily come through the chats as questions, so okay. I'd say keep going.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't downloaded the DAX Generator yet, but are there any templates in there?
Aha, Greg, it's like you were reading my mind. That was my one more thing. Okay, so let's go back. Right. So what about, like, where do we get the templates? Like, who's making them? Where are they going? This is the first time I've heard about this tool. Well, let me give you the whole story on that too. So right off the bat, when you download it, you'll have these things called built-in templates. Dieter has made like a good list of templates that are here. Here's Kerbal. She's a YouTube channel that makes her own date calendar. So she's got a little date calendar in there made for you. You can use these other things here, like simple rows count. Here's a counting simple rows. The template here is just your measure, and then you can count the rows of your table name. So again, counting rows is actually a fairly relevant thing. You potentially could use that in many different tables. So it might be relevant to use that in multiple places. Also here, you'll see there's going to be other options here. So you can make your own user templates, or you can add a Git repo, or they call them a repository for a collection of data. So this brings up my other point, which was I've already made a whole bunch of templates for you. So we've got over, I think, 60 templates or so right now in this library. So if you go visit this GitHub URL, and I'll put this in the chat window for people to find it. And Paul, if you don't mind, flip that URL over to LinkedIn if you don't mind, because it doesn't go over there very well. But here is the templates that we have. And if you click on this templates area, you can see here's all the groupings. We have compares, filters, math operators, text time, and totals. So when you click on these, you can then see these are all the different templates. Now, one of our friends from the community made a great job providing us a summary. So there's actually a README file in every one folder of these, and you can see everything that's in here. You can simple sum, you can see a file, you can see the row count, name of the measure, and what is the file name, its description, and the supported data links. So you can actually just search through this and look through graphically and see what is in the templates and all the descriptions and how they work. So you can actually read up on all the measures that are inside this Git repo. If you want to go grab this one, you go back up to DAX Templates, you grab the little code item here, boom. And then I love using Visual Studio Code. So you can go into Visual Studio Code, and you can then here click Clone Repository. You drop in that little URL, github.powerbi.tips.templates, this little thing up here. And I'm in Visual Studio Code here, just FYI, and I'm clicking on the source control icon. When I hit enter, it'll ask me where you want me to save it. You can then click a little area here in your computer. I typically save my stuff all in the same area. And what this will do, and on my computer I've already done this, you can see DAX templates have already been created and placed on my computer. So when I go to my local machine in that folder, if I now say open folder and go to my repos folder, repos, go to DAX templates and hit select folder, boom. I'm in, and I can see all the schema and all the templates that are inside this file. So I can open up here. There's all my DAX quick templates. So I could edit them here if I wanted. I can link them. And the best part is now if I go back over to DAX Generator, when I click on add repository, it just asks me where to go get the templates from. So again, I navigate right to where I had all my information. I go to this PC. Let's see here. It's probably under users, Mike Carlo. Actually, no, it's just kidding. I don't do that with my repos. I put my repos right on the hard drive. There's repos, and then I go here to my templates. And there we go. There's my templates folder. So if I click the templates folder, and if I click OK, boom, all of them are immediately loaded. They're linked to my computer. And then periodically, I can go into my Visual Studio and just check for updates. So I don't even have to update things. I can just watch the repo. And as the community adds more templates, because I'm monitoring that as a community level, you can just automatically get any new templates and pull them down to your machine. So I'll minimize that. And with that, you can switch over to templates. And there you go. That's your list of all the templates from the community. And we're still trying to add more. If you find things that you find are helpful and useful, you can jump right in here and pull all these different templates right back into the tool. So good question, Greg. You're letting me to water on that one. And now I'm officially finished. So with that, I think that's all that we have here.
Is there a limit to parameters?
There is no limit. You could make as many parameters as you want. One thing we didn't go into is if I go back to the tool here briefly, wherever I put it, I think it's here. One thing I didn't really explain very well, which I probably should have done a little bit better on, you see that we have this encoding section. So I was making a single measure in this one encoding. But imagine for me if I had two measures or a table and I wanted to put a measure in that table, right? Multiple steps to build the encoding. Well, I can go down to the encoding section and add another section. So I could build a whole nother measure or 5 measures all at the same time. So let's say I wanted to build a template that would load 5 or 6 things all at once. So I think I actually have one of those. Let's see if I have one that will actually work here. So I'm going off the reservation here a bit. So be aware, this may not work. I've been mucking with a lot of templates here recently, so I might have adjusted something a bit too much. Let's see here. Simple sum, average. I thought I had one in here that was simple aggregates build multiple measures at once. Okay. All I did here, if you look at the template of this one, there are multiple templates, not just one. And you can't really see it in this one. You'll see it when we move to the next section here. But in this case, we have min of, max of, average, sum, count of. All of these measures can be created off of the same column name in all cases. So now what I can do is I could go here and say, okay, min, max, sum of. Some of it might create a problem here. So let me go grab another column here real quick. Let me go back to my model here real quick. This might break it. Let me get rid of sum of sales here real quick. Delete. All right, let's go back over here. First thing, I need to pick my table name. Fact table. Column name. Sales. Now, Greg, you were saying earlier, hey, I have a lot of common time dimensions. This is a great use case of doing that. One measure could be used to create the sum of the column you need as your base measure. And you could reuse that over and over and over again in other measures that are being created here. So you could reuse that named thing multiple times. So now if I hit generate, you'll see now that it's going to ask me to select a parent table. But at this, look at this. There's all these other items now. So there's actually 5 or 6 different measures that it's going to try to create all at once. So I'm going to select a parent table here. Let's go back to my fact sales. And then I can pick another one. Fact sales. And I think there's another way you can automate some of this as well. It'd be nice if it would do it for all tables all at once. But I can, for each one of these, now I can define, and again, I could pick this in random places all over the data model. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same table every time, but I could do a bunch of other things as well. Now, if I hit create or update, let me just do all. There, I think it did them all. We'll see what it does. I don't know what it's doing right now. Or maybe just did one of them. I don't know what it's doing. Your mileage will vary. It should do all of them. It might be a bug, but see, it's adding them slowly here. So I'm doing average of, max of, thought if I hit all, I would do all of them. Oh, there it goes. Now it did all of them. I must have clicked something wrong. That was probably my fault for the demo. So now it went through, and for each measure, it dumped in everything. Average, count, distinct, max, sum. So now it did all the measured building for me, and now I can just use all of them in my table. So now I can go to my, well, these are count of sales, but it doesn't make a lot of sense here. But now I can then grab all these other measures in here, and now I've got all the average, count, distincts, max, and sum of sales. These are the ones we just made. So kind of cool. That's awesome. It'll just automatically add multiple things. Excellent. Another great question. All right. Now I think we really are officially finished. I don't have any other demo. I'm literally out of demo. Like there's no more demo pieces. There's nothing left hiding up these sleeves.
Well, thank you.
We are officially done.
Yeah, thank you. That's really cool. I can think of a lot of different applications where that would be useful to be able to put that in. So neat tool.
Excellent. Do you guys have any more meetings coming up? Is there another one on the calendar that you guys want to announce, or stay tuned for more announcements coming up?
We are working on the December networking event. I believe is the first. We're working on a location yet, but I think it was December 1st. Is that correct?
Will there be brats? That's what I need to know. If they're brats, yes. I might have to be there.
We'll get you up to Green Bay. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get you a brat.
Yes, now we're talking. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, with that, thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time. It was a great user group.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll see you next time. We'll catch you around. Make sure you join us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 a.m. for the Explicit Measured podcast. We'd love to have more people joining the conversation around Power BI. Cheers, everyone.
I'll for you. It's worth your time.
Thank you very much. I didn't pay him to say that, I swear. Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin.